My name is Sheena Collier. I am founder and CEO of the Collier Connection in Boston While Black. And Boston While Black is a membership network for Black professionals, entrepreneurs, and students who are seeking connection and community. We have a digital platform as well as in-person and virtual programming where we serve members, over 600 members across the state who are seeking access to culturally relevant experiences and information, looking for resources to navigate the city, and want to build an authentic personal and professional network. And overall, we're helping to shape a city where Black people want to live and work because they have the spaces, tools, and relationships to find their tribe, grow their network, navigate the city, and have fun. We're excited to join this conversation and be in partnership with, as I mentioned, not only the Chamber, but the Boston Professionals of Color Consortium, which is also a membership organization aiming to create a community of Boston-based African-American professionals with a shared goal of creating meaningful impact within their respective employee groups, organizations, and throughout the broader Boston business community. Through their programming, engagement, and peer-to-peer knowledge exchanges, the consortium is a platform for economic activity and development to give Boston a competitive edge for recruiting and retaining high-caliber African-American talent. The consortium is launching. And so as their launch event, along with the Chamber and Boston While Black, we wanted to host this discussion about how Boston-based companies are utilizing ERGs as a way for employees to connect and foster a greater understanding of people, their diverse workforce, especially in light of the racial injustices, COVID impacts to the workplace and the competitive job market. Companies are really relying upon their ERGs and affinity groups even more. So we're going to have this discussion around exploring the ways in which ERGs are becoming drivers of change and mechanisms to attract and retain diverse talent. I have some amazing panelists who I'm going to bring up to the stage with me. I'll give a quick intro of them, but we'll ask them to do a better introduction of themselves and their companies. First, we'll bring up Thaddeus Thompson, who is the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer of Martha's Vineyard Hospital. Afternoon, Thaddeus. Bevilton Morris, who is a Managing Director at Accenture. Welcome, Bevilton. And Keyanna Schmiedl, who is the Global Head of Culture and Diversity at Wayfair. Welcome, Keyanna. So as I said, I'm gonna pass it over to them. Just ask you all to do a quick self-intro, an overview briefly of your company, and tell us first about just kind of the employee resource group, our affinity group structure at your company. And so I'll kick it to Keyanna.
Hey y'all, excited to be here. My name is Keyanna Schmiedl, as Sheena mentioned, and I lead culture and inclusion here at Wayfair. Wayfair is the global e-commerce company. Many of you might have some of our items sitting around your home, and if you do, thank you. And if you don't, check out what I am advertising here today. But no, why I'm really excited to talk to you all is because we do have some amazing employee resource groups. I think specifically for this conversation, it makes sense for me to talk a little bit about Way Black, who is our Black ERG, and some of the ways in which we have partnered with them. I think we all know that when George Floyd was murdered and we heard about Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, there was a real call out for Black folks to jump in and help solve this challenge. How do we communicate about it? How should we be thinking about our business moving forward? And Wayfair was no exception. And I think for us, we were very lucky to have our members in Way Black who said, we want to help define how we have these conversations and these discussions, but also along with their executive sponsor, who was a white man on purpose, saying, but we also need to be able to advocate for ourselves inside of the organization. And so I'm excited to get into some of those details, but I'll kind of leave you with that, a little bit about the structure and Way Black as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Thaddeus.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Yes, Thaddeus Thompson. I'm the Administrative Director for Clinical and Perioperative Services and the Chief Diversity Officer at Martha's Vineyard Hospital. Martha's Vineyard Hospital is an affiliate of the Mass General Brigham System which is obviously anchored by our two academic medical centers, Mass General Hospital and Brigham and Women's Hospital. The organization as a whole, though, has about 78,000 employees spread across the New England area, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Eastern and Western Massachusetts. Our ERGs at an institutional level sort of started with our multicultural professional group, which is actually based out of Mass General, and that goes actually all the way back to 1992. We quote 21 ERGs in our organization, some of which there are multiples, young professionals. There's a women's ERG, the LGBTQ, Black Excellence, which is our Black Employee Resource Group, actually has its founding. It's just about a year old now. We launched just about a year ago, but our institution as a whole has a pretty rich history in this space. Black Excellence happens to be the only system-wide ERG at this moment. That's our little bit about us.
Wonderful, thank you. And Bevilton?
Sure thing, Bevilton Morris. I sponsor our AAERG, what we call African American ERG, especially here in the Northeast. We do have several various types of ERGs at Accenture. Accenture, as you know, one of the largest employers, basically almost 500,000 strong employees across the globe from a consulting perspective. But clearly our AAERG, or African American ERG, it has been pretty much tasked to attract, develop, retain, and advance our people of color. Specifically after the George Floyd incident, as you mentioned, we had several listening sessions and we had some actionable pods put together to move the agenda forward. So, we do work across the environment. We have various types of ERGs, whether it's the women ERG or the interfaith ERG, to combine resources. As you know, you strengthen in numbers. And so we do work across the board to do that. But there's a little bit of a snippet of what we do at Accenture.
Wonderful. A couple of you have mentioned your ERGs either launching or gaining influence as a response to the racial climate. What are some tangible ways, like things that people can take away, measure, touch, that your ERG has had influence on your corporate culture or your inclusion and diversity agendas? And then along with that, what are some challenges that you've encountered and solutions that you're looking to implement or have implemented to overcome those? I'll start with you, Bevilton.
Sure. I think one of the biggest impact we have seen at Accenture is that we have everybody now involved in the conversation. This is not a Black conversation. This is an everybody conversation. And we have the sponsorship and the involvement from the leadership from the top down. It has become ingrained in every conversation, whether it's promotion, whether it's retention, whether it's upfront. So I think we have done that. The impact has been that it is more of a front of mind conversation, even in promotion, even in hiring, and even in decisions that are being made. It's always been said it's okay to be invited at the table, but can you actually feel inclusive here? So we've seen for the past couple of years that these things are pretty much front and center. There isn't a leadership discussion without that discussion being part of it. So that to me is impactful. That to me is right. The second thing that we have done that is also impactful, we have put together not programs, but we have put together specific task teams, task force that have gone out and attack retention or gone after promotions and sponsorship, right? We all know it's okay for you to have a mentor, but if you don't have a sponsor, you're not going to go anywhere, right? People like to work with people that they love. So that we're pretty much attacking the areas that we know will make a meaningful impact. Still, the challenge that exists, and I'm pretty sure my other panelists will touch on that. The challenge that exists is how do you bring the majority to think like the minority? How do you make it an inclusive mindset than just a conversation? I know we Martin Luther King spoke about that in the past. We're still struggling to do that. And I think it's one person at a time. Right? If we can help one person at a time understand that we are both in the same struggle, then we can get that impact done.
Wonderful. Keyanna, at Wayfair, what are some tangible ways you've seen that the ERG has influence over culture or your agenda, and what are some of the challenges you've encountered?
Yeah, I think I appreciate what Bevilton said about both the conversation piece and helping folks to think beyond, talking about intention and moving towards impact, right? And I think for us in our partnership with Way Black, if we think back to even 2020, and the group had been around for maybe 5 years at that point. But when we started looking at, hey, we're, maybe advocating for a couple of floating holidays, like what should we be putting up? It was really in partnership with that group that we were able to articulate the value of looking at Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a company-wide holiday. Again, we're an e-commerce company, so we have folks in our warehouses, kind of frontline staff, who are working during typical bank holidays. So we try to be fair and equitable, even though in Boston, primarily we are a corporate workforce when we're thinking about time off. And so the group said, we typically organize a volunteer effort on that day anyway. We have volunteer paid time off here at Wayfair. It would be great if we could designate MLK Jr. Day as a company holiday to say, you save your time off, your volunteer time off for other things, but on this day as a company, we use it as an active call in to service. And that way Black can kind of lead that partnership. And that's what we've been doing because they got involved. I think some of the other things are our change starts at home conversations. That first conversation that we had as a company where 4 members of Way Black volunteered to share their experience of being Black in America and did not hold back because they wanted folks to understand how they live with joy, how they live with pain, and really what the struggle is like every day without necessarily being questioned, saying just sit with this, sit with our stories, and then come to us prepared to advocate, to be an ally, for us to tell you what we would like to see you do, but also coming with your own ideas. And I think they really showed how to lead vulnerably and authentically in those conversations that we've then leveraged the same structure to talk about LGBTQIA issues, right? Neurodiversity, women in leadership, so many other topics, but we started there. I think where we continue to want to work is in that action piece and seeing organizations take systemic action. We've had a performance equity task force now for a few years, and we continue to see improvements in how we think about and remove bias from performance processes broadly, but also looking specifically at how is this going for our Black and Brown communities? What's happening related to promotion and career development? How are we bringing folks in and ensuring that our culture is fit for them and not just that they are a fit for our culture? And seeing the number of ERGs that we have at Wayfair continue to grow, but also, again, leading the charge, Way Black, saying, hey, we're going to actively participate in the Culture Ambassador Program. We're going to have those conversations with people coming on board about what the culture really is like at Wayfair, and why we're excited and we're still here and we're doing this work. And so it's a little bit of a combination of every time we identify an opportunity, seeing folks from Way Black raise their hand and say, I want to get involved. I think the last example that I'll give you here, because I could clearly go on and on, is the evolution of our supplier diversity program. I've been at Wayfair since July 2019. At one point, saying like, let's think about supplier diversity was just a bullet on a presentation that I was given. And a member of Way Black raised their hand and said, hey, I think I know the right people to get this conversation started. Do you mind if I take a run at it? Cut to now, and one of our Way Black co-leads, who's currently out on family leave, congratulations, when she comes back, she's going to be leading that work full time and also hiring another person on that work as well. So I think the biggest success story of Way Black has been, as you typically see, these folks identifying the challenges, where we should be investing our time, and then showing the organization, this is how you can do that. Just start by asking the questions, start by being open and vulnerable, and you start to see a lot of other folks taking their lead.
Thank you for that. What a great example, that the last piece around, a need that was identified through the work, or at least led by the work of an ERG, and now someone has a role, because it was brought to senior leadership's attention, seen as, I'm sure they made the case for why it's important, and now being able to give her the opportunity to really build something from that is like motivation for people to hopefully feel like they can speak up and share, and just shows that they're invested in the company. I really want to see the company do better so that it's somewhere that they stay. Thaddeus, Black Excellence, you mentioned, launch during the pandemic, similarly to Boston While Black. Along with what I'd asked Bevilton and Keyanna, how has COVID in the virtual work environment influenced the ability to build this community?
So I'll certainly start with the first part of the question, and limit that to the things that I think are unique in our situation. Yes, only a year old, but we had the great fortune that Mass General Brigham had launched really everything that falls for us under diversity, equity, inclusion, and healthcare equity under an umbrella that we're calling Uniting Against Racism. And so that's multifactorial with financial commitments, involves everything that Bevilton and Keyanna just talked about, recruitment, retention, hiring, supplier diversity, all of the above. So for us, it was nice to be able to plug into that. And so that's also the challenge, right? So we're fairly new. And I think I've seen it elevate quite a bit in that 1 year, which is, are we being reached? Are we identified as a resource when the institution has an issue that involves healthcare equity or DE&I? And I think generally speaking, the answer is yes. But as you can imagine, there's also been the incidents where we look and we go, we wish we had been contacted about that issue because we think there would have been a voice for Black excellence. Really, the changing culture piece, in my mind, really is, for the most part, both when we formed Black excellence and in these first few months, first year of its existence, people have really sort of gravitated towards one thing, and that's really been sense of belonging. By far, it's been the overriding theme. And so the partnerships like the Boston Professionals of Color Consortium, the partnership with Boston While Black, are really geared towards giving people a space where they have a sense of belonging. And clearly in that way, there's this cross-fertilization. So if things are going on at these other member institutions, then those things that's an opportunity for us to bring those back to Mass General Brigham for consideration. So influencing culture, I'm taking a more futuristic view, again, in part because we're only a year old, and anticipating that it really will be about what we do in the future that drives culture across Mass General Brigham.
Then how's the remote work piece played in? So, we face this issue of trying to build community with people who are, in their living rooms and in their kitchens. How have you all been able to create that sense of belonging when everyone's in a different place?
So when we're together, it almost happens organically, right? And in fact, one of the things I would do more is just get us together just for no reason whatsoever. Obviously people are doing other things and they have their work commitments, but sometimes that literally may just mean a 30-minute gathering for us on Zoom. And much like, the firms here, all of which are global, the opportunity to do that, in our case, for 78,000 people who are spread across New England, exists in a way that would have never existed before the pandemic, because this virtual world and virtual connectedness hasn't worked. Now, the membership relative to that 78,000 is still fairly small. So part of what we're doing is we're trying to continue to make people aware that we exist and pull them into the membership. But in many ways, it's actually made it quite easier to do that, because now that 30-minute lunch gathering is literally just you logging on to the meeting, and then when you're finished, going back to what you were doing.
We have so many audience questions. This is an exciting topic. I don't know if you all saw you all meaning the panelists saw the numbers before but I know at least as of last night, we had almost 400 people registered, and I'm sure it grew today. So obviously a topic that is at the top of a lot of companies' minds. So I'm going to kind of switch back and forth between our questions and the audience. Some of them are very much aligned with ours. One that came up was, how do you navigate honoring certain affinity months, raising awareness, driven by ERGs, without only relying on the ERG to create programming, but also not overstepping? So how does a company authentically say, hey, Way Black Excellence, AERG, like, we want you to lead on this, but also not being like, and we're expecting you to totally do this. Like, we have responsibility as a company as well. Thaddeus?
So for us, we try to approach this from the spirit of intersectionality, right? None of us are just one thing, right? You're Black and a woman, right? You're a woman and LGBTQ. You're a Latina, right? And so there's respect for intersectionality. And the way we execute that internally is we have an ERG leadership group. And in fact, I had moments where someone would share an event with that group, and it was very clear to me that what I needed to do in that moment was just share it, right? It wasn't Black excellences. It belonged to the affinity group who was coordinating it or overseeing it. And in that moment, my job as Black Excellence ERG is to share that with people and allow people who it resonates with to participate and engage. So I think it's really comes down to the spirit of intersectionality and recognizing that our job, of course, is to be allies and active allies, and I think that's the approach we take.
Bevilton, were you going to jump in? You all are going to see me shift.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in.
75 degrees in February, so I have to move out of the sun. But I wanted to see if you just had a response to that. So along with what Thaddeus said, so Thaddeus, what I hear you saying is Black excellence as an entity can support anything that's going on across the company because we all hold multiple identities. And along with that, and I think what the audience is asking is, how does that responsibility not only live on the ERGs? Like, the company still has a responsibility as a company to celebrate difference, whether the ERG is driving it or not, but doing it in a way that's respectful and doesn't overstep because, it may not be as authentic coming from the company.
Yeah, I think all the ERGs have a responsibility to bring that lens to, for example, you're celebrating Black History Month. Obviously, they're gonna look to Thaddeus to do it, right? They're gonna look to you to come up with some ideas to say, how do we celebrate Black History Month the best we can? But the company itself, and that's true for Accenture as well, we try to make it not about the Black folks that are trying to, be the catalyst behind it, but how can the company best represent Black History Month? How can the company itself holistically best honor the Black pioneers that have come before us? And what type of engagement can we have on this cause so we can have everyone involved in the conversation? So it's always, as I would say that it's always falls on the black folks to sort of step up and start that conversation and put it together. But by extension, you have to bring in the other ERGs, which other people are members of. And I like what you talk about the intersection. It's really good when you say that, because the women's ERG, the Latino ERG, or the Pride ERG, and we can all come together and celebrate Black History Month. And by extension, the firm is celebrating Black History Month here. Therefore, we expect participation and from the firm, not just from the ERG members.
I want to bring in both of you all mentioned the intersectionality piece, and Keyanna in the beginning talked about the executive support that you have for We Black in particular. So what are some of the ways your organization's senior leaders support or validate your ERGs? What has been especially impactful? And then Keyanna, for you specifically, you made the comment that this intentionality around having a white man be the executive sponsor. Tell us more about that.
I think most often in organizations, what you tend to hear from even the most senior leadership is best of intentions, don't really know how to get started. And it's kind of aligned to the last question that was asked, right? Like, how do we actively participate without overstepping? What is it that folks are looking for us to do? And really where those questions come from typically are this discomfort with or inexperience with difference. And so essentially for me, in saying, look, our exec sponsors should not share the identity or intersection in common with the group, is an opportunity for them to take those same leadership skills that they're using in the business every day and say, advocate on behalf of these folks who are different from you in some significant way. And it's like creating a giant reverse mentoring opportunity, right? Where it's like, you are here to listen, you're here to learn, and then you are here to take that back to the leadership team and have these conversations. So for instance, one of the discussions that we've most recently been having around returning to the office is for our caregivers group, right? And the exec sponsor for caregivers is not currently a caregiver themselves, not of children, not elder care. And so there's a lot that as they're learning, they are activating and saying, oh no, I don't think that's right. Let me jump in here. Or, hey, I know the group is going to have questions around this. Can we clarify this here? And the exec sponsor for Way Black, same thing. And what we have seen is a level of activation and engagement from these exec sponsors because they're in a learning mode with the group, and then immediately want to take that out in action on it because it's not so familiar to them. I think that's a very different role to play, which is the advocate role, the sponsor role, very different from a mentorship and an advisor role, which I do think should align to that dimension of diversity that either that group represents or the intersectionality that group represents. And so it's something that we have seen permeate throughout the organization. We've seen them be more willing to jump in on conversations that they might not have done as easily previously. Another example I'll give you is our chief finance officer. We asked him to be part of a conversation about trans experience. And he was like, I'm not really sure. I don't know a lot about it. Do you mind if I reach out to the panelists beforehand? Had one-on-ones with each of those panelist members, agreed to do the conversation. It was excellent because he also admitted, like, I was nervous at first. And that gives everybody permission to say, okay, so it can't just be nerves that allow me to opt out. But he's also continued a relationship with each one of those individuals that he connected with from that day forward. And so we're seeing this change people in ways that the group would like to see people change, and in ways that make them feel like this connection is leading to something tangible inside of the organization. And so when we're talking about belonging and inclusion and equitable experiences, they're really feeling bought in that this will happen because they're talking to the leaders about it who can impact that change.
Wonderful. Thaddeus, how about at Martha's Vineyard Hospital and MGB as far as senior leadership support and interaction with the employee resource groups?
Yeah, so our executive sponsor happens to be a gentleman by the name of Dr. O'Neill Britton. He's actually the associate COO at the system level. And he's just really fantastic about just guidance and counsel, challenging our thoughts, making us really evaluate positions and stuff like that. And so, and I think that can be fairly typical, of the executive sponsor's role. And then you know that he's having those conversations behind the scenes, and that creates bi-directional support, right? Both helping you understand how something may be viewed from senior leadership, and allowing you to craft your message and strategy based on that information. And more acutely, even the Boston Professionals of Color Consortium, we're engaged in that conversation, and obviously trying to put the consortium together. And I was able to fairly quickly, once we identified what that was, I was able to bring that to our system level Chief Human Resources Officer, Rose Sheehan. Rose Sheehan was able to reach out immediately to our system level CEO, Dr. Klebansky, and it was clear that there was significant support for this. So it really gets down to literally just grassroots activity that says we acknowledge the importance of the ERG, and we support those things that you think are important to allow us to move the agenda forward.
This question is coming up. We talked about it a little beforehand together, but then this is like every other question that we're getting. So the people want to know about how you all are being rewarded or acknowledged, or even if there's compensation, or your thoughts around it. So I'll frame it. What type of, so we've talked about how employee resource groups have grown over time to not only, which this is very important, be places of belonging for people of varying identities, but also influencing, have an impact, a measurable impact on the business, and even people being able to receive positions or influence and impact the conversations and decisions that the business are making. We know that it's a lot of work, and people really put a lot of time into, again, like I said earlier, I think it's because they feel committed to their companies and to their colleagues, and they want to be in a workplace or help create a workplace that they want to be in. So what type of commitment or conversations have your organizations had about rewarding, whatever that looks like at your organization, acknowledging ERG leadership, and what do you think more can or should be done?
So I'll take that one because I'm very passionate about it. So I think at our firm, definitely, right, we are a company that measures everything. That's what we do. Therefore, we measure the impact that individuals and as well as ERGs have on our retention, on our promotions, and everything that we do, right, on the bottom line. In the end, the ERG has to have an impact on the bottom line and have to make the environment better. That's just clear facts. We are for profit, right? And therefore, if we think that it's just being a nice to have and doesn't really make an impact on the bottom line, then we are not relevant, right? So we have to be relevant. Personally, I know that, especially in the Northeast with the Northeast leaders and as well nationally with Jimmy and with Julie, they are very vested in making sure that the folks who are putting in the time for these ERGs, and especially the ERG and the rest of the ERGs, are differentially compensated. By that I mean, I'm not saying that there is a specific compensation for doing the work, but it does help you during your evaluation at the end of the year, right? We call it +1 here, but to me, it's more like it's something you're passionate you do, but it makes an impact on our bottom line. Therefore, you are recognized for it. Where would I like to see it go? I'd like to see it go to, this is a bit personal, I'd like to see it go to actually being rewarded as a paid item, right? Like literally, like it's something that is tracked and you are compensated for it because it takes energy, it takes time, and it takes commitment, right? And I go back to something that Keyanna said that really struck me is if you actually not, if you're not Black and you're sponsoring the Black ERG, then you're going to learn, then you're going to plan. But we reward, by far, companies reward executives who make a difference, right? And therefore, if this volunteer work or passionate work that you're doing does make a difference, I think it should be attached to most of our senior executives track, and it is. They have been tracked on that and on what impact have they made with the ERGs. And I know our leaders, especially in an office, are very passionate about it. They hold themselves accountable. They hold us accountable for the work we have to do. But I'm not sure if I know it's a dimension that's measured, but I'm not sure it's a direct correlation to compensation. You understand what I mean? It's like it is measured, but It may not be like, I know that if I knock that one off the path, that it makes X of difference, right? That's where I would want to see it go very specifically.
Thank you. Keyanna?
Yeah, I think, Bevilton, I'll kind of dive deeper on the performance piece, right? One of the things that we've been working on over the last, I would say, year plus, maybe even 18 months, has been firming up the expectation that if you are leading an ERG or if you are playing a committee level role in an ERG, that work should be reflected in your performance review. And where we're talking about demonstrating certain skill sets, whether it's at the next level because you're going for a promotion or you don't necessarily feel like you have those same opportunities in your current role, showing how people are demonstrating leadership, communication skills, all of these critical thinking, all of these other things in the ERG space, and tying that to the competency model that we have. So at Wayfair, just as in many other places, we're pay for performance culture, right? Like that's how you get your pay increases, that's how you get bonuses and things. And so being able to say that as a part of your performance review, the work that you've done as a member of the ERG, Tracy West, who is our ERG leader right now, leads the program, has spent a ton of time with our talent management team to say what these are the competencies that we believe are articulated at different levels in the ERGs. And so we want to make sure that we're aligned here and how we're talking about these things so that the managers know what the expectations are of them in there, and that when folks are writing their self-review, that doesn't get discounted. And we have seen over time ERG leaders be promoted. We've seen this used in cases to talk about their opportunities for growth and development and opportunities for piloting certain programs, et cetera. And what I would like to see over time is that we firm that up, right? That we formalize what that looks like. And the WIFM, the what's in it for me as an ERG leader or committee member, begins to become more robust. I think we have been in an evolution from primarily affinity groups, which are the groups to create belonging, to employee resource groups where we have strong things like mentorship programs. We start to see how they're helping us to build pipelines and bring folks in, but also keeping folks and developing while they're here. And then we've started to see them become business resource groups, right? Influencing marketing strategy and things like that. And so how can we continue to tell that story so that where we're saying we're impacting the bottom line, we're saying, so then this is the carve out and the ask for the folks who are doing that work.
Wonderful. Thaddeus, did you want to add to that?
I would only say that the one thing I'd add is that we've taken the approach, again, Black excellence, in this case specifically being young, we've taken the approach that we wanted to address what the membership expressed was what they were looking for. So I go back to my sense of belonging comment, and the relationship with Boston While Black, right, is about bringing forth a benefit that contributes to people's sense of belonging. So we've really taken that approach. Obviously, you know, as you grow and do future surveys and re-ask that question, then it forces you to think about how you would design those benefits or how you would design those rewards. But in our first year, we really attacked the thing that the group said was what they wanted to experience.
Oh. We have a couple of more minutes. I wanted to end with, talking about why ERGs and you all giving some advice to companies that are trying to start them. But before we get there, we've talked about kind of the positives. You all have been able to build are building these entities within your organizations. You've had support, but maybe give us an example or your thoughts on if someone is experiencing unengaged, unresponsive, or just uninterested executive leadership around creating ERGs and affinity groups, and maybe within the journey of creating yours, or just in general, just thinking about ideas or tips for people on how do you engage someone. There are people that immediately get this and they're like, yeah, obviously I understand this, but if there isn't that understanding at the beginning, what are some ways to help to bring people along?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like Keyanna punched on, its relevance and its impact, right? Always when you're trying to sell or win someone over to see things on your perspective or see that in, start to try to frame what's in it for them. Start with that in mind, not what's in it for you. Because unfortunately, you the individual or you the group that's trying to make an impact or try to make them understand that this is necessary or this could have. You have to make it relevant and you have to make it impactful enough so they can say, oh, wow, we need this, right? So unless you make that connection, and again, she termed it really well, is that the evolution of those groups have been from social sense of belonging, inclusiveness, a safe space I can speak, a safe space I can hang out with people I know, people that look like me, people that talk like me and won't make fun of me, stuff like that, to, oh, wow, it can make an impact. It can help with retention. It can help with involvement. It can help with engagement. It can help with promotion. It can help with moving people along the journey. And it can help with bringing in the right people into the company. And all those have associated financial benefits with them, right? So therefore, in a world of where we are getting more inclusive, we're getting more global, and the world is shrinking from a technology and the way we touch each other. Try to make the proposal to them a little bit more about why not? Why can't they do not without this? Because it's impactful and it can help with the bottom line, right? Retention, for example, costs money. Every time you hire somebody, the average price is $30,000 to train and keep them. So if you are just bringing somebody in and letting them back out to the world after 2 years or a year, you're spending that money over and over and over again, right? And you're draining your resources from an impact perspective. So I think if you can frame it that way, it helps. And I would like to see employee resource groups, as we call them now, to Keyanna's point, evolve to where we are actually setting the conversation and the strategic direction of the company, right? Not just talking about it, but setting that strategic direction so that it is more inclusive. And in the inclusiveness, they see profit in that. They see growth. They see, better employee engagement, whatever measurements you want to do. But that's where I would give out the advice to get people to pay attention to whether you need this group or not.
Wonderful. Thaddeus?
I would reinforce everything Bevilton just said, and I would describe it this way. I approach most things from a strategic lens, and And so if I was thinking about a group of executives or a specific executive, part of what I'm doing to describe what Bevilton's saying in a very simple way, I might say to myself, I know my boss is ultra competitive, right? And so I might show them that our competitor has an ERG in that space, right? Our competitor is part of the Boston While Black Consortium, right? Because at that moment, I'm activating the thing that's important to them, right? Which is part of what Bevilton just described. And if I'm thinking about a group of executives, to some degree, you're really doing a stakeholder analysis, right? How committed are various individuals? How much desire do they have and interest do they have? Are they actively engaged in helping you? Or are they just tacit? Or are they resistant to it, right? And you're sort of strategically identifying where people fit and figuring out how to move those levers on an individual level. How much institutional capital do people have? So for anyone, I would really be thinking about it just strategically and figuring out what moves the levers based on what happens to be the mindset, what's important to those senior executives.
Keyanna, did you want to add to that?
I think really quickly touching on a few different things that both Bevilton and Thaddeus said. I was over here like, yep, to all of that. But I think something that I've learned over time is, I'm a Taurus. I am very, very stubborn. And I'm like, I will convince you. Over time, I have said, no, let me start with the people that don't need the convincing, see how far we can go, and start to build up some of those results that may just be the unlock for the other folks that do need the convincing. So I would suggest that. I would also say, look, some of this is about having those conversations with people, figuring out what's on their priority list and saying, okay, I'm hearing what's like number 9 or 10 for you, and I might be able to take a run at that. And if I can do that, can I bring you a what's in it for you that then kind of gets this what's in it for me? And how do I show that it was me kind of bringing it back? And, I sort of think about that old book, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together at the Lunch Table? But it's like the folks that you go and you have those brainstorming conversations with, whether, it's at whatever intersection you're at, and say, oh, well, I had got together with this group of people and we kind of came up with this idea. I wanted to present it to you. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, that group of people put you on the right track. Oh, and now you're asking, can we provide a little bit of funding for the group? Sure, because you've already started to do some good work, right? So how can you show versus tell and have it be kind of this combination of things that you believe are important, but you're also finding that the business thinks is important as well?
So a couple of things just to, if I could summarize what I've heard you all say, for people out there who are thinking about, how do I make this case? What if I'm running up against leadership or others who don't see the importance of it? Bevilton saying, there's a business bottom line. We know that there are moral and civic and social reasons why this is important. But similar to what Keyanna said, there's been this evolution and now this type of group has been around long enough, or these types of groups, to say, here's how it also impacts your business. People are staying because they have this sense of belonging. It's not just because they're having happy hour with each other. They actually are creating this connection to the community. And I think Thaddeus is saying, yeah, and there's also an economic competitiveness piece. This is an opportunity to show as a company how you differentiate yourself from other companies, or show how you are doing and implementing some of the same things that other top companies are, so that when people are making choices about where they're going to go, or if they're making choices about where to stay, they feel like they are somewhere, at a company that's leading around these really important issues. And then Keyanna saying, show some results. Don't necessarily, your first task doesn't have to be to convince the unconvinced, actually find other people that believe in what you believe and are ready to put in some work to maybe even do some, experimenting or do some things to show some results. And I know for me as a CEO, if someone comes to me with some work already done that I don't have to do, and now you're showing me like, okay, you've actually put in some work already, and you're giving me better information to make a decision with, that really goes a long way. Because I'm guessing that sometimes some of the resistance might be, I don't even know what to do. Like, I don't know what to do. So you're asking me to do something that I don't know. So now I have to figure this out. And so I think being able to bring that to them. Last question to you all. I think you all have answered the why question. So we won't go any deeper into that. However, to get a little more granular before we close out, it's 2022. I think that even we see it in the HBCU space, conversations and other types of groups, people still questioning, like, do Black people still really need spaces like this? Is there really this necessity? We should be thinking about more ways where our different identities are coming together than people necessarily having these spaces. So, what would you say? You all have groups within your organizations that speak to many identities, but specifically around Black or African-American ERGs. Why do employees need them? Why do Boston-based companies and other companies need them? And why are they still important to your employees? And then we'll close out from there. Thaddeus?
I'll just go
Bevilton was ready. I see you, Bevilton. Bevilton came. Thaddeus, and then Bevilton, you can go ahead.
I'll just say it's yes and, right? And for any of this, if someone's questioning, all they have to do is look at data, right? Look at retention data, wage discrepancy data. We're in the middle of COVID. Look at, COVID, mortality and morbidity data. Look at the social determinants of health. All that stuff is, more than validation for the continuing needs of this. But like so many things, it's yes and in my mind.
Wonderful. Thank you. Bevilton?
I would put it this way. We would love to see the day when the need for an employee resource group specifically for African Americans is no longer needed, because we are living in an inclusive environment where everyone feels empowered, feel to be free to be their authentic self, and be able to navigate and be sponsored and promoted at the exact and same rate as everyone else. Well, until that day, according to Bob Marley, until that day, we still need a space to feel comfortable, to feel, it's like to talk, to have discourse, and to even strategize as a body to bring back impactful things to the corporation, to the organization, right? And we're not saying that safe space has to be always just Black folks. No, that space does, and right now, the space includes others, right? Includes others with it, but it's still a space to be able to come in and just say, y'all, guys, I'm just overwhelmed, or I'm tired, or given COVID, it was a space for people to just talk to each other. Are you experiencing the same thing I'm experiencing? Because I'm sure it's an ethnic thing I'm experiencing and the disparity I'm experiencing. So just like the other ERGs, you need that space. And until that day, we still need that space to do that. I would say that we should continue to encourage it being impactful, but we still need the space.
Thank you. And Keyanna?
I would say in-group spaces are safe spaces for brave conversation. And so at the end of the day, any group that has decided to get together around a shared identity or intersection is saying that the value for them is not having the explanatory comma in this conversation when they're having it in every other conversation. And I think it's similar to, if we extrapolate out, we do not expect the C-suite to just stop having conversations with only other members of the C-suite. People get together in these groups around different dimensions of diversity, whether it's tenure, whatever it is, because you're saying we're starting from a base of a similar experience and let's build from there, as opposed to the bulk of the work is collecting all of the different experiences so that we can find those similarity points. It just makes it easier to iterate faster, come together and coalesce on ideas, and then bring those out as a group to share with others as a unified kind of thought and presentation. And so, everything that both Thaddeus and Bevilton said, I agree with, but I think it's important to note, we don't ask these questions about, do we really need these spaces of these other groups? And so I wonder about where that question comes from and what folks feel like they're missing out on. And what I'll close out with is this. In May 2020, in June and all of the months after, what we found were a number of people were activated to learn, to figure out how to be allies, but they started doing that by joining the Way Black Slack channel. And we said, no, please do not put more work on this group. Let this be a space for them. And what we created was the Wayfair Allies channel. Here's where you learn how to be an ally. Here are the resources that you can kind of read, have conversations about kind of the Black experience and things, and then come back here when you're a little bit more ready to actively contribute to moving forward and knowing what roles you can suggest that you play. And so that's kind of what I would say to folks who are asking this question.
Thank you, Keyanna. That was an amazing ending. Keyanna, Thaddeus, and Bevilton, thank you all so much for this conversation and for being leaders in your organizations. Thank you to the Boston Professionals of Color Consortium for bringing together these employee and business resource groups across Boston organizations to learn from each other and be able to influence even more. And thank you to the Chamber for hosting us, for being a partner of Boston While Black as we partner with ERGs and other companies around how to address the life outside of work. So as all this work is going on inside of companies to create these safe places for belonging, partnering with us to also create that within the city so that we can all work together to attract and retain, in particular, more Black talent. So thank you all. Have a wonderful afternoon. Hopefully we've all inspired every company to go out and create groups. And look forward to talking with you all again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.